right. Aloha and welcome to today's webinar presentation. My name is Chris, and we're here at BYU-Hawaii, and we're hosting today's webinar with Manuel Paneno in preparation for our Asia Pacific Career Conferences. A 4-day conference held here at BYU-Hawaii designed to help students that are interested in employment in Asia Pacific to connect with employers with recruiting demand. Today, we're learning more about Embrace China from Manuel in his offices in the UK. All right.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Have a few more things.
Okay. Before we begin the presentation, let me introduce you to some of the aspects of our software. Those of you attending this live can see that you have the opportunity to participate in Q&A at the bottom. If you click on the Q&A button and submit questions, we will try to respond to those now. You will also see that there is a way to raise your hand or interact in different ways if you would like to address something or have a question. For the most part, you will see that you cannot be heard or seen, but your way of communicating with the presenter is through the Q&A. Now that we're familiar with the technology, let's begin our webinar. The time is now yours to share your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Let me put this big screen. Aloha, everyone. My name is Manuel. I am very excited to be, I almost feel like I am in Hawaii. I used to be a student there, and I remember flying straight from BYU-Hawaii to China to do a master's degree. And it took me a few months, I believe, before I stopped saying aloha everywhere. I loved my time there as a tour guide, as a student, and look forward to meeting with you in March at this conference. Well, as I said, my name is Manuel. I live with my family here in the UK. Our company Embrace China is based in the UK, and we had a great opportunity before graduating to go to China and teach English, and there met wonderful people. And afterwards, I wanted to still work with the Chinese people, and because of the contacts that I had made there and the organizations that took care of me when I was working there, I was able to partner with them. And so Embrace China is made of these different entities, expert partners that in China provide a wonderful support for our participants that we recruit and provide a professional job teaching English in China in different provinces. I would like to start my presentation sharing a little bit about the first week in China, what to expect once you arrive there. As I have said, we partner with 2 expert organizations that have received thousands of students to teach English over there for over a decade. And when our participants arrive in China, the first thing that happens is that, well, we have them, our partners, go and pick them up at the airport. And there we have, for the first week of your stay in China before the teaching date starts, there is orientation on the basics of life in China and opening a bank account, campus, their facilities, and other basic things that without appropriate support and help would be otherwise very difficult, I suppose, to manage in a foreign country. One of the other things that we provide for free to our participants is during that first week, we have about a 5-day program where TOEFL or TESOL training and certification takes place, since the law in China requires that such a certificate be obtained prior to teaching English over there. We provide that while in China, and I think that's such a great advantage that our participants would have the opportunity to be able to travel to China, and once there and before they start working, be taken as a group and led by the hand to obtain this certificate, which would further equip you with the tools that you would need to teach. I haven't said that I haven't said this yet, I believe, but when I say teaching English, what I mean is teaching conversational English. There is this great desire by the Chinese to learn English, and they have grammar English lessons and reading English classes as well. But the purpose or the task that we assign to our participants is teaching conversational English, so that that is the kind of work that we look for when we recruit people. After that first week of training and orientation, then our partners will lead you to the city or final teaching destination where you will be working at. And I'd like to dive in a little bit into the teaching experience in China. The curriculum most often is up to the teacher, meaning you will most often not be provided with a textbook to follow, but rather you will be able to use your own character, your own personality when you walk into the classroom, use your own ideas to come up with ways to, using a specific topic, help your students practice speaking English. They have great ability to read and write, but oftentimes speaking is more difficult, and so your job will be to help them speak in English. And I find it really fascinating and really fun. I had a great time when I first went to China as an English teacher and had that opportunity. It allowed me to get to know my students better also, because they were always conversations, and I loved it. I thoroughly loved it. There are, of course, internet resources and various means to help you to prepare for those lessons. Some questions that often come up is whether you would need to know any Chinese. And there is no Chinese that is required of any of our participants. As a matter of fact, the schools would have as a norm not to speak any Chinese in class, so as to further enhance the students' learning of the English language during the lesson. I wrote here paid teachers, and that is because we have two programs. One is a volunteer program, and the other one is a paid program. And I am now focusing on the paid program, but I did want to mention that there will be occasion to speak about these volunteer programs if any of you would be interested, as I will be going there in March. And you also have my email address that I showed at the very beginning on the first slide. So please feel free also to email me at any time with any questions that you might have. But our paid teachers teach around 20 hours. Some schools, they teach 15 hours, others they teach more. Up to 25 hours is the maximum workload. It varies a bit depending on the school. And there is always a 2-day off a week during that weekly teaching schedule. And this is the same. This schedule will be the same whether you teach at a nursery level or high school, university, college. If you let us know in advance, most of the time we're able to easily find a school for you to work or to teach at the level that you desire to work or to teach. We still ask of participants to keep an open mind, and if we are not able to find, for instance, if you like to teach at a nursery, and for one participant, let's say we don't have a nursery, but we have an open vacancy at a high school or college, we do ask to keep an open mind in that regard, but you will be nevertheless still notified beforehand with enough time of that situation. We also can accommodate sometimes groups of up to 5 people within the same, if not the same school, the same city. There's a great network that we work with. And again, if you were to tell us in advance, you could, as I think is all the more fun, come along with a friend or two, and we can accommodate you within the same area as well. Very well. Requirements. I like to talk a little bit through the requirements, unless I want to be stopped. But if not, I will, and at the end, have some time for questions and answers. So if you have them, feel free to go ahead and ask it.
We do actually have a question.
All right.
Can you tell us a little bit about, you mentioned you don't have to speak Chinese necessarily, but are you looking for students who are native English speakers?
Wonderful. Very good question. Yes, I was going to actually get to that on the requirements, but that's a very good question. Yes, we are. They do not need to speak Chinese, but again, Embrace China is not the company that would have the final say on hiring, but rather would be the educational institution, China, in the end. And we know that they are particularly looking for teachers that hold a passport from either the UK, Australia, Canada, the USA, sometimes also South Africa. So they are looking for native, for teachers that hold these passports. We also, and as I will say later on, there's also openings for teaching sports and music. And for those, they may not be so particular, so long as they've studied, in this case, in America, at BYU-Hawaii, and lived at least 3 years in the US, so that for these other subjects, such as teaching sports or music, you may not need to be from either of these countries, and may still have, may still apply. Does that answer the question?
Can I follow up and ask an additional question?
Yes.
If a teacher is a non-native speaker of English, but they have certification of their language abilities, in particular using the ACTFL proficiency guidelines, and they can document that their language is at the advanced level, would those teachers still be considered for teaching positions?
Yes. That's a very good question. Yes, I would still encourage them to submit their application as well. Correct. And yes, the answer is yes. They would still be considered. Correct. That's a good question. Thank you. Again, the final word is not with me, but the main standard is as we have shared. And yes, having those TOEFL or TESOL qualifications, as you mentioned, would be appropriate for you to still apply. Thank you. Should I move on now? Or are there any other questions? Wonderful. Going through the requirements is for this paid program is one, the teacher has to have a bachelor's degree. And again, what we are offering is a professional contract, as I will now share more about. So it is required that the teachers have a bachelor's degree, and they do not have to, it does not have to be on any particular field. As I mentioned, holding a passport from one of these countries and a commitment to teaching. Why do we require a commitment to teaching? This full academic year lasts 10 months. And the reason why is because if a participant was to go to China and start teaching English, and in November, halfway through the semester, they decided to just go back, then that would put a lot of pressure in us as a company, in that it would be virtually impossible, if not really difficult, to find someone to substitute because of the logistics of timing and applying for visa. And through a semester, lots of people are already either studying or working, and as well as the school, they do provide this foreign teacher for each student, and having that student taken out would also be detrimental to the school in that regard. So we wish to emphasize that all participants be committed to the full year of the contract, to the 10 months that the program lasts. I did mention about having a TOEFL or TESOL certification course once in China, but I did want to highlight, nevertheless, that teaching qualifications or experience are not required necessarily. I did mention also about sports or music as other subjects that we also recruit for, and there is not as high a demand on those as there is for teaching English, but there is nevertheless. So if anyone was to be interested, if you would let me know, I would look into it and go back to you with whatever options or availability for those subjects for the coming semester.
Can I
yes.
jump in and ask one more question?
Thank you.
You're probably familiar that here at BYU-Hawaii, one of the degree requirements for a TESOL BA is to complete an internship. And I'm the internship coordinator for the program. Most internships are unpaid, but they're only 120 hours. Would it be possible for an interested candidate from BYU-Hawaii to come as a volunteer teacher and teach for maybe 4 to 6 weeks under the supervision of one of the classroom teachers that has a paid contract?
Wonderful question. There is this volunteer program which which as a benefit has housing, utilities, and a meal allowance included as part of the contract for teaching under this volunteer program, for which you do not have to you do not need to be graduated already. You could be halfway through your course. Having said that, this program lasts 5 months, and if that is too long and you're looking for up to 6 weeks, then the answer is I would have to ask and look into it, as I have not been asked for this shorter amount of time before. So as of now, I suppose the answer would be no, only 5 months, but not necessarily. I will look into it and come back to you if you really mean to stick with those 4 to 6 weeks. If that.
What we stick to is 120 hours. And I'm encouraging students to try and distribute those 120 hours over at least 4 weeks.
Okay.
Maybe 6 weeks.
Wonderful. Well, we do have over 5 months already settled, organized, But let me look into having it done again, the 120 hours on a within those 6 weeks, and then come back to you.
Perfect. If maybe when you're here in March for the Asia Pacific Career Conference, if you've got the answer, we'll have an opportunity to chat then.
Thank you very much. So I've made note of that. Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Great question. And I'm glad to hear it, actually. Thank you. Very well. Moving on, then, I would like to talk about the church in China. You might be thinking or very willing or interested in going to teach, and live in China for a year, but maybe thinking, but I can't go to church. How will I do this? And so I thought it important to bring it up since I'm talking at a church school. So the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has enjoyed for many years a very good relationship with the Chinese government, and the church is established in China. In Hong Kong, as you know, we have a temple and missionaries. In mainland China, we do not, but the church still operates. The church there's a few buildings in mainland China, but for most of the vast area that main China covers, members of the church belong to a virtual branch. This virtual branch is called the Central China International District Branch. And I wanted to simply state that our participants, as they go to China, they will be able to they will belong to this virtual branch and will be able to connect through a Skype phone call to church every Sunday, where there are callings and there's church. And if there is a priesthood bearer where you live or nearby, you can have sacrament as well. And so that, the church will still be there while in China. And I think that's just wonderful that we have that opportunity. And let me see. I'm looking at the time not to go over. I think we have about 4 or 5 more minutes. So I'll move on. I think there's no more questions so far, so let me continue. Okay. Well, in China, yeah.
Just so you know, you can go over a little bit if you need to for the presentation, so it will be okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And it's really great that you're an alum and you understand some of the needs of the students, like attending church, and obviously that could become an issue for students traveling to that part of the world. So I really appreciate that you included that in your presentation.
No problem. I remember while in China, some sisters lived in an area where there was not a priesthood holder, so they would, in fact, not be able to partake of the sacrament, but they were able to connect to church, and they could call their branch president, and there's interviews, and there is ministering done online. So there is still this church support that, to me, made all of the difference. I loved it. So as far as the area where you will be living, the people itself, I have just fallen in love with these people. The Chinese people are so giving. They're so welcoming and so willing to give of their time. They really put themselves in your shoes and will ask you questions. Do you know how to do this? Where to go to do that? Things that are basic, but because we're in a foreign land, on a foreign country, foreign language, they appreciate that, and they will go out of their way to help and accommodate you. And that was the one of the main highlights of my experience while in China, the friendships that I made, how genuine the Chinese people are. Here are 2 pictures of a teacher with her class. Her students are now, she taught Spanish in this case. They went on to Spain to study a master's degree, and one of them now works at the Spanish embassy in China, in Beijing. And it's just so neat to keep those friendships and connections. And the other picture is a teacher with children from the neighborhood that you would meet. When you go out in China, you would see gatherings of 50 people or even more that put some music on out in the street, and they do some choreography or on a park, and you can join in if you wish. And it's just such a beautiful and different culture, and there's so much to learn and to enjoy from them. And that is really the reason why we decided to call our company Embrace China, because I think there is so much we can embrace and learn from and gain from them. But as you go and teach them, you will be such a blessing for them as well. They will have a foreign teacher. That's a show. That's something really meaningful to them, to have someone, a foreign teacher that comes to teach them, a native speaking teacher, and they appreciate that. And you look at their faces and it just makes your day. So teaching and the appreciation for the work that you do, that you can feel from them, is such a rewarding experience that I just highly recommend it. And I have full confidence in that those that will go will enjoy their time there. Now, I had a short video, but maybe I can share it later on, because I know it's time. So I think I'd like to pause and see if there's any questions that any of you might have.
Manuel, I think we would actually really love to see the video. If you
Let's go for it. No, let's. Excuse me, I think I haven't shared the video yet. Just a second. New share.
While you're doing that, I do have one question, which is,
yeah.
Can you tell us more about the types of skills that you're looking for, or that the schools are looking for in particular when they're selecting which students they'd like to bring out?
Thank you. That's a very good question that now I'm thinking. I didn't put that on the presentation. Very good. Well, I know that they look, as I mentioned, this from these being passport holder of these countries, they're native speakers, and they also look for people that are, and we look for people to hire that are open-minded and that are not afraid to simply to speak up and to simply within a different environment still move and have that ability of making decisions. They will be looking for a lively person and someone with an open mind, simply because the teaching that our teachers are required to do, they are given full, is the right word, leeway, freedom for them to prepare their own curriculum. And yes, they will then report to the school on grades and whatnot, but when it comes to teaching, it is all up to them. So they are looking for people that are energetic, that are full of life and want to teach. If you want to teach, to help these people learn English, you have half of all of that you need to be able to go and teach. They, as I said, they have other English lessons, but they very much appreciate the opportunity to have a native speaker. And that by itself, it's already something that they do not have, that they treasure and really appreciate. So if you're a vibrant person, and we look for people with values, we actually have our own honor code. Can tell that I come from BYU universities, but that would be no problem for recruiting people from BYU. So we look for people with high moral standards that are vibrant and that want to actually teach and help them learn English. And that's it, mainly. I'll share the video now. This is from one of our partners that put together this video of what life in China is like for a teacher. Voy a salir para que cuando acabe el vídeo. All right. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you. Well, that was the end of the presentation until March. Unless you have any questions that you might have at this time, otherwise.
I think everything you shared was super valuable. We're really excited about what you're able to offer for our students. I like the connections as well to maybe exercise science and music. I'm not sure if you're familiar, since you've been a student here, we've now changed some of our academic programs. So we follow what's called the Holokai. And so students pick a major and 2 minors. And instead of doing the traditional general education, they're kind of experiencing the general education through that variety of the major and 2 minors. And so I think you might find we have some students with some interesting minors that may fit into some of the things you're seeking as well. So
wonderful.
We look forward to seeing you in March.
Yeah, Manuel,
thank you very much.
Great to have you back on campus.
Mahalo nui loa. Me too. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.